Please be seated. Good morning. Today's psalm, Psalm 19, is one of those readings that, as we say in the business, sort of preaches itself. A beautiful bit of prose like that found in our vivid creation stories and in the epic tales of the families of our faith. As with those, one needs only to stop and listen to be able to recognize the good news of God's life among us in the words before us. You don't need to bother much with biblical hermeneutics, exegesis, archaeology, or context to understand or even to experience what the writer has offered. C.S. Lewis said once of Psalm 19, "I take this to be the greatest poem in the Psalter and one of the greatest lyrics in the world." The psalmist clearly knew that those listening to this song were a people already in the habit of observing, often with sheer terror and delight, the mystery of the heavens and the stars, and what they might have to do with the turbulent waters, the bringing of fires and swift wind, ascribing their awe to the gods in the heavens that ruled their world. The writer of this poem wanted them to know that it was his God and God alone who created all of it, and this God who renews the entire creation. The heavens are telling the glory of this God every day, into night, into day, into night again, into eternity. I wonder what you see each day that calls to mind the glory of God. I wonder who you see each day that calls to mind the glory of God. I wonder what you do each day that calls to mind this glory and joins in the proclamation of God's goodness and justice, of God's love and hope. Maybe by supporting the outreach and worship of St. Paul's, by holding a door or holding your tongue, helping a stranger, caring for a loved one, saying your prayers, and not just during the Chiefs game, but keep those coming. Do you imagine when you do these things that they are a part of the chorus of creation? As the epistle tells us this morning, we are all individual parts of one body, all showing forth the glory of God. And when others see your actions and know your heart, do they ascribe their awe of you to your astrology chart or to your therapist, or maybe simply the possibility that you know they're watching you? Does it matter if others notice that the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts are pleasing to God? Just over 6 years ago, I made the acquaintance of a certain someone who was in the habit of texting me almost daily. One morning he said, "I just heard on NPR that today is going to be the best day ever." The first time he did that, I thought, that's strange. I wonder what's happening today that would make the radio person say that. The second time he did it, I thought, oh, right. This is just a wonderfully positive human being reminding me that every day is filled with possibility. And I would smile and probably roll my eyes and send back something equally profound and encouraging, like a thumbs up emoji. Then a strange thing happened. Around the jillionth time he texted me that, I started to believe him, that today was going to be the best day ever. And even now, through the political and pandemic turmoil of these strange days, he still sends those messages, sometimes switching them out with, "I can't wait to see what you will do today." And I see every morning like the starting line of a race, just a chance to begin again, knowing that anything could happen. Like today's bridegroom jumping out of bed each morning, genuinely excited just to get the day going. Psalm 19 reminds us every day the sun crosses the sky and reminds us of God's glory and power, of promises of eternity. And every night, we are invited to listen to the sacred knowledge found only in silence, and in that mystery, come to know the balance of light and dark, of wisdom and humility. It's all there, it's all here. Just stop, and don't just look, but also see. Earlier this week, just before midnight, we crashed our car through a small snowbank on the side of the highway. We were in the middle of nowhere between small towns in north central Missouri. The roads had been recently plowed, so the pull-offs and farm roads that served as exits from the highway were all blocked by these icy mounds. But the fields themselves, miles and miles on either side of us, they were glowing. You could see them on either side of those little man-made borders, and I desperately wanted a closer look. So the first time I saw what looked like a slightly lower snowbank, I just went for it, crushing our way through, and then over the snowbanks. We skidded down a short ways, and then just drove on out onto the frozen tundra. The fields were heavily draped with folds of drifting snow, like ocean waves, and they were brightly illuminated by a full moon under a clear, inky blue-black sky. Stepping out of the car, I immediately felt like I was on another planet, or like on Jupiter's icy moon, Europa. The hush of night was somehow even further muffled by the snow. The first intake of icy air, it stung a little, but then it stopped. I decided that must be what it's like to breathe underwater. The sheer weight of it, the vastness. We just stood there and eavesdropped on all of that nothing. Wave after glittering wave of snowy indigo silence. And the light, this celestial light, sourced from the sun, telling its story to the moon, who is then splashing down her wisdom through all of our senses without words. Just as the psalmist said this morning, no sound is heard from them, yet their voices go out into all the earth. I was stunned into an overwhelming sense of peace and gratitude. I wanted to just stay there. Also, I have to admit, it was one of the many times I thought to myself that God was being more than a little show-offy. Now, you don't need a charmingly optimistic texting buddy or a winter's midnight adventure to hear the telling of the glory of God. You need only to stop, to look, and then see. The book of Exodus reminds us that we, all of us, are called to be a great nation of prophets and priests, of those who see and those who tell every new day. This morning we see Jesus in the synagogue reading, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." So now with Jesus, we share this good news. Not just about the psalmist's tent pitched in the sky for Earth's closest star to travel, but also the good news about the inner sanctum, the tent pitched in our hearts for this Son of God. This temple now turned inside out, this holy of holies where heaven and earth meet in each of us. Jesus, now anointed along with we fellow priests, to bring good news to the poor here. We carry out this holy mystery, all of us, broken and whole, lost and found. We carry this out into the snowy parking lots and muddy puddles of our lives, into our conversations where above the noise of all the other news of the day, we are called to proclaim that today, this day, from this morning and every morning to come, called to recognize and share God's signposts, God's wisdom, light, forgiveness, and love of all that is created. It is for all to see and to know. In the brightness of the sun and the darkness of the night, just look, see, and then be a part of this song, of these stories, which continue to be fulfilled, not only in our hearing, but in our telling others. Let's pray. God, every day our lives are in your hands, and for that we give you thanks.